The pelvic floor and you, you and your pelvic floor, that's the topic of today's lesson. Allow me to guide you through a movement sequence. I invite you to follow along, so not just theory, not just talking about it, but I will guide you through a movement sequence that should spark joy, of course, but also spark interest in yourself, in your inner workings, how your pelvic floor relates to the rest of yourself, to your core muscles, to your legs, to your neck even. But before we touch the pelvic floor, so in this video we will prime ourselves to integrate, to invite the pelvic floor to be part of the rest of ourselves. So that's the strategy for today's lesson. Allow yourself to find a safe space, a place to work, to follow this lesson, a floor space, me time, you time, and we will start on the back. So please come to lie on your back. Okay, and then you are on your back with your legs, have your legs extended, your knees extended, and place your hands on your belly. So what are the landmarks of the belly? Of course, there's the navel, the belly button, and to the sides, if you feel, please feel, use your hands to feel, to find your pelvis, the bony parts of your pelvis on each side, these bony bits on the left and on the right side, the anterior, superior iliac spine. It's like a longish thing, but on the front there's like two little knobs, the iliac crest. I'm not sure if there's an English word for that. The both front knobs. And if you feel right above the front knobs, there's like belly again. There's muscles also, and of tissue and whatnot. A million things. But so just place your hands and rest your elbows. And our first movement is actually exploration and just a non-judgmental observation. So the first movement, please lift your head to look towards your socks. Let's see, what socks are you wearing today? Did you put on socks? And if not, how many toes do you have? So please look to your feet, lift your head and observe how you did that. So that's the first thing, non-judgmental, just observe what happened and use your hands to feel. So I want you to find out how much of your core do you recruit to lift your head. So do you feel your belly muscles engage at all when you lift your head? When your head is up, can you feel your abs? The abs, abdominal muscles that go from your sternum, from your chest, from your ribs, all the way down to your pubic bone. So the front, the long, like that's the 6-pack, 8-pack, or 1-pack, just one mountain. So that's something to observe. Does your belly dome out when you lift your head? Does your belly become higher when you lift your head? Or does your belly flatten when you lift your head? And where can you feel your muscles engage on your belly? Is just the muscles in the middle, or do you also feel on your sides where the iliac crest is? The muscles on the side, can you feel those muscles inside of you engage? Is it like your whole core that is working? And ideally, you recruit all of those muscles, but all of them in a good proportion. So your belly won't dome out, you won't suck in your belly, it's just your muscles will stiffen up a bit or become more firm in order to stabilize and in order to pull up your head to look towards your toes. So that's our first observation. So what is happening? And then our first movement, so the first actual movement of this movement sequence where we start to recruit or invite all of us towards the pelvic floor. So the first movement is, please lift your left leg a little bit. So keep your left leg long and just lift the heels of your one heel of your left foot off the floor. So lift your left leg just a little bit and then bring it down again rest your leg. Lift your leg and rest your leg. And also as an observation, not as a work to perform something. The point of the lifting is to observe how you do this and how much of your abs you use. Because before we were we were lifting the head and we needed to stabilize the core muscles to lift the head, but now we need to stabilize the core muscles to lift the leg. So how is lifting the leg different from lifting the head? Something to observe. And now let's specify the technique a little bit more. So when you lift your left leg, press down with your right leg. So actually from your perspective is you push with your right heel and with your right thigh, your right leg against the floor. It's almost like a swing backwards of your right leg, but you cannot swing your right leg backwards, of course, because there's the floor. And because there's the floor, there's support from the floor. So push down, push your right leg against the floor in order to lift the left leg. So do you feel that connection? You push the right leg backwards in order to help the left leg to lift. Yes, that is quite the trick, isn't it? So then don't do that. So keep your right leg just almost like floating and lift your left leg. And you will notice when you don't push your right leg backwards, when you just have your right leg resting at ease, when you lift your left leg, it's a little bit harder for your core. It's a little bit, probably it feels like a little bit more hard to lift your left leg when it's on its own, when the left leg needs to lift on its own and nobody's helping the left leg. Lonely little left leg, that's so bad. So let's help with your right leg. Push the right leg into the floor to lift the left leg. We can make our life so much easier. But what else can we do? What else fits into this pattern of lifting the left leg? If you feel, what else could you do to help the left leg lift? And maybe you discover that when you not only press your right leg against the floor, but also your left shoulder. So press your right heel, your right leg against the floor, and also your left shoulder in order to help the left leg lift. How is that? Is that easier? Or you could just, as an experiment, press your right shoulder against the floor, the right leg and the right shoulder in order to lift the left leg. But you see that doesn't work so nicely. Do you see that? So it's a diagonal, the right leg and the left shoulder in order to help the left leg lift. And do this a couple of times, a little bit a production line here until you get to really get the hang of it, the feeling when you push your right leg backwards against the floor and your left shoulder backwards against the floor, it starts to be easy to lift the left leg. It's almost like walking. And actually this pattern, we use it for walking, but now of course we're just on the floor. No walking on the floor. Okay, so let's turn that around, take a short rest in order not to overwork anything. We want to explore, we want to learn, and it's not a workout. And now switch it around. Lift your right leg. Lift off your right foot from the floor. So. Is that easier or more difficult? For me, the right leg is so much more difficult. But what did we learn already? You can help to lift your right leg by pressing down with your left leg. And then it's almost as easy as taking a step. When you press down with your left leg, it's easy to lift your right leg. And then do not press down with your left leg. Keep your left leg afloat. Keep your left leg just resting lightly and lift your right leg, and you will notice you have to engage your abs and maybe your what is it? Transversus abdominis and your obliques and all those muscles to help the right leg to lift if nothing else helps. But if you use your left leg, whee, the right leg can come up so easily. And what else can be used? Of course, the diagonal, the right shoulder, press down against the floor with your right shoulder and your left leg in order to lift your right leg. This is actually quite fun in a live setting with a client because it's always a surprise and something that most people can relate to easily, that it's so much easier when you press down the other leg in order to lift the leg. Or you could alternate. Lift one leg and press down with the other leg and the shoulder. So left leg and right shoulder, or right leg and left shoulder. Okay, and then take a rest. So that's the beginning of a larger pattern we're starting to form. But how can we recruit more? What can we do next? Take a short rest on your back. Just take a short rest. And then side bend your head, so to bring your left ear closer to your left shoulder. So bend your neck to the left side, so to bring your left ear closer to your left shoulder. And the one thing you can do wrong here is to roll or turn your head. So make sure, so you really have to make sure that you're always facing the ceiling in order to bring your left ear closer to the left shoulder. If you want to roll your head at all, roll it to the right, so you start to look to the right. But ideally, look forwards. But under no circumstances, roll your head to the left. Keep your head oriented forward, so that's a little bit difficult movement maybe. Keep looking forwards and bring your left ear closer to your left shoulder and back again. So this kind of movement, to bring your left ear closer to your left shoulder. And just for comparison, you could see how that works on the right side when you bring your right ear closer to your right shoulder. You will probably find a difference between those two sides. But let's continue to the left, to bring the left ear closer to the left shoulder. How can we improve this movement? How can we recruit more of ourselves to help this movement? So it's not just the poor little neck that has to do the movement, but we can use our whole self to do this. In order to do this, please interlace your hands and bring your hands behind your head so that your head is resting in your hands. And if your shoulders are not good enough for that, just lift your hands as far as you can, maybe towards your ears or something, so that your arms are kind of up and the hands are kind of each at the same distance towards the head. So mimic this position. Ideally, you can place your hands behind your head so that the back of your head is resting in your hands. So not the neck, but the back of your head. So that's the starting position. And then drag your head to the left with the help of your arms. So move your hands, move both arms to the left, but not in a straight line, but in a curve, so that your left elbow actually comes closer towards your left foot. And back again. So you have your starting position, and then slide your hands together with your head to the left in a little curve and back again. And do this a couple of times until you have the hang of it. And while you're doing this, you can refer to the previous movement. It's a very similar movement to the previous movement, but before you were moving your head on its own, all alone, and now you have the shoulders to help you. And maybe you notice your left side curves in and shortens, and your right side lengthens, and you could even start to breathe against your right side. The long right side that opened up. Let's make this movement bigger at once. So please stand your left foot with your left knee towards the ceiling. So stand your left foot, left knee towards the ceiling. Stand in a good position so you can push the floor with your left foot in order to roll the pelvis to the right. And keep your left knee towards the ceiling. So that's the movement, to push the floor with your left foot and roll the pelvis to the right, and at the same time drag your head to the left. So it's the same like before, just now we're also using the foot and the foot, yes, the left foot to press against the floor and the pelvis to roll to the right. And of course your right leg can roll a little bit or can move a bit. Everything might move. And here we recruit the obliques, we recruit the whole left side in order to side bend, in order to help the neck to side bend, in order to help the left ear to come closer towards the left shoulder. And I would not have, there would be no need for me to explain this movement. You just move and you feel and you would know. And put it all together so that it makes sense. The pushing of your foot and the rolling of your pelvis and the shortening of your left side and the dragging of the head to the left. And how much do you have to twist and turn and side bend and put everything together harmoniously, huh? Like if you would paint, if you would be as if you would be a sane person. which of course we both are perfectly sane. That's why we're doing this kind of movement lessons, because we discover there's meaning in them, and they help us discover something to organize our inner physical life. Okay, and then take a rest on your back and feel how that feels now. And let's return to the movement of the head. So that's the starting position. You're just on your back with your legs extended and maybe your arms extended. And that's the starting position. And then bring your left ear closer towards your left shoulder. And yes, allow your shoulder to move, allow your left side to shorten. So even if it's just your head, your neck, that side bends, allow yourself to have learned from what we did before. To use more of yourself to really side bend and recruit the left side. Of course. And now, yes, does this feel good? I hope it feels good. Okay, let's do the same thing to the other side. So again, interlace your hands, bring your hands behind your head and drag your head to the right. So start with a very small movement, just a small movement, the head a little bit to the right, just a little bit, and then back, and a little bit more to the right, and back, and start to feel how you recruit, how you use your muscles on your right side to shorten your right side. And yes, so you drag your head to the right, and your right elbow comes closer. The distance to your right foot gets shorter. Or you could stand your right foot and push the floor with your right foot and keep your right knee towards the ceiling and roll your pelvis to the left and side bend to explore how can you help, in which direction do you have to push with your foot in order to really help to side bend to the right. And while you're doing this, you might notice this is different than in standing. In standing, you can slump over to the right and to the left. You can use gravity to fall to the right and to the left. But here on the floor, we are already on the floor, so you really need to recruit your core, the muscles you have for a reason. You have to recruit them. You cannot be lazy when you're on the floor. You have to use these muscles in order to produce this movement of side bending to the right. Come back to the rest position on the back. And feel how you are on the back. And then let's try this movement again to bring your right ear closer to your right shoulder. And see if that movement also became a bigger pattern, something bigger. It's not just the right ear towards the right shoulder, but it's almost you're using your whole self, you engage as a whole into this movement of side bending. Or you could even think of your right hand reaching downwards to your right foot, or your right hand sliding downwards the right outside of your right leg in order to side bend your head to the right. And of course you can do the same thing to the left. Slide your hand down towards your left hand down towards your left foot in order to side bend to the left, to go from the right to the left. It's almost, so you see, we start to mimic walking. Okay, so where have you been? Let's make another reference, another test movement. So lift your head again to look at your feet and see. You can have your hand on your belly and see how is it now when you lift your head to look at your toes. How much of yourself do you engage now? What do you feel? What is happening in your abs and in your transversus and in your obliques, and how much do you engage? And maybe something worked too much before and now it doesn't work too much, but other muscles came to help. You're starting to distribute proportionally. Okay, so we continue this lesson. It's quite cool, isn't it? If you find that it's interesting, it's relevant, it's meaningful, and this is what it's amazing, isn't it? If you find these relations, and we'll just keep going. We will add to it. So please come to lie, turn over, flip over easy, sunny side, flip over easy on your front side. On the front side, and place your head on the floor and turn it in whatever direction you kind of feel comfortable on your belly. And be on your front side. And the movement, the first movement, so in your starting position, have your arms wherever you like to have them. And the first movement is to lift your right leg. But this time we are on the belly, you're on the belly, and lift your right leg. And see how you do that. Also observe. So we want to know. We want to know how we do it. We need to look we need to allow ourselves to feel, to sense, to look at ourselves in truthful. Just to observe what do you do when you do that? And do you use your buttock, your right buttock muscles? Because when you use your right buttock muscles, it will be easier to lift. And when you press maybe the iliac crest, your right iliac crest against the floor, when you lift your right leg, maybe it's easier. And when you lift your right leg, maybe let's try this. So what did we do in this lesson in the beginning? So yes, of course, you can press the left leg against the floor in order to help the right leg lift. So does this help at all? And it should, doesn't it? What a little trick. A trickster lesson. So, but okay, so you lift your right leg and you press down with your left leg against the floor in order to make it easier with the rest. So that works. And if you remember, we used the opposite side shoulder when we were on the back, but now it's difficult. But you can have your arms in a way where it's kind of works, but it kind of does not work so well when you to use your shoulders in this situation when you're flat on your front side. But we can use the head as a counterweight. So lift your head while you lift your right leg and you press against the floor with your left leg. So maybe lifting your head makes lifting of the right leg easier. Let's see, how far do you have to bring your head over to your right side or your left side? How do you have to lift your head? Yes, how do you have to lift your head, or where do you have to lift your head in order to make it easier to lift your right leg off the floor? Okay, and then lift your left leg instead of the right one. And let's do the same things with the left leg. So lift the left leg without the help of the right leg. That's hard. Or without the help of the left buttock. Oh, that's also almost impossible. Okay, and then push down, push your right leg against the floor in order to lift the left leg. So do you feel that connection? You push the right leg in order to help the left leg to lift. And then also lift your head in order to help lift your left leg. And maybe you discover some other things that can help or don't help. So that's also important. First of all, it's very important that you make your own discoveries. You find your own tricks, and you don't even have to tell them to others, but it's nice to share and find out what works for you and what does not work for you. So we don't ignore the things that don't work, but you need to acknowledge them in order to either avoid them or use them on purpose if you want to make your life more difficult. And when you lift your right leg, is it your right iliac crest that presses against the floor, or is it your left one? What makes it easier and what makes it more difficult? These kind of questions. Inner improvement of inner organization. All right, and then if you had enough, please come again to lie onto your back. Let's take a rest on the back again. So just rest a little bit on your back with your legs extended, arms extended. Or have your arms on your belly. And then we had two test movements. One test movement is to lift your head, to look at your toes. So do this. See how that changed, if that's easier to lift your head. Or let's say if it's easier to recruit your core and your legs in order to look at your toes. Or lift one, and then, yes, so did this change, yes, and then lift your left leg. Yes, and you know when to lift your left leg, it's easier when you press down with your right leg and when you press down with your left shoulder, and maybe this pattern already started to establish, so it feels more natural when you do this. And maybe when you press down with your right leg, now you also can feel your right buttocks engage. And maybe you can feel your head move to one side. And we will have the same thing in walking. The head, in walking, the head also sways from one side to the other. There's a side bending and a twist in walking. So play a little bit with what you discover, how this pattern starts to establish itself. Yes, establish. So we're looking at these things now consciously. We become aware of these connections, but then we don't want to keep looking at these things all the time. We want to have them automatic. We want them to work for us, so that when we walk, we can just walk and think of the things we have to do and do the things instead of looking at walking all the time. This would be madness. But now we look at these connections, these inner workings in great detail. That's why we take the time to reorganize ourselves towards the better, to introduce options we did not have before or we did not discover before. So, but of course we cannot sway the head left and right in walking. We have to kind of keep the head in position. And so let's do one last thing to make this easier. Again, please interlace your hands and bring them behind your head, so to rest your head inside your hands. So that's the starting position. And then drag your head to the left in a little curve. So we already had that. And stay there. Stay bent a little bit towards your left, and keep your hands on the floor where they are. So stay with your shoulders bent to the left, and just slide the back of your head over the right wrist, over your right hand, back onto the midline, so that your head comes back onto the midline of your body while your shoulders are still bent to the left. And then, so your head is centered over your feet, but your hands are to the left. And then slide your head back, so we are at that starting position. Should we do this again? So, okay, come back to the center with your legs long and your arms long. Then interlace your hands. Bring your hands behind your head. Yes, so your head is resting in your hands. And then drag your head and your hands to the left, so your side bend. Your left side is shorter than your right side. So that's the starting position. So stay there. That's the new starting position. And now only move your head, nothing else. The head, slide the head over the ball of your right thumb onto your right wrist. So your head is centered over your legs. So that's the movement. And then just move the head, side bend the head to the left. So you erect the head in this sense on the floor and you side bend the head. So that's the movement. Pretty complicated movement. And there is a reward for this complicated movement. This will feel so much better in standing in a moment. And then come back to the center. Okay, and then let's do the same thing to the right. So start on your back with your legs long and your arms long, and then interlace your hands, bring your hands behind the back of your head so that your head is resting in your hands, and then slide your hands and your head to the right, which is a side bend to the right. That's the new starting position. And stay in this starting position. Nothing else moves except for your head. So slide your head over the ball of your left thumb onto your left wrist. And then return to the center. Okay, so we have everything together now. And take a last rest on your back. Just feel how you rest on your back now, how your shoulders feel. Oh, this feels a lot nicer than in the beginning. My shoulders are so loose and nimble. How is it for you? And then let's look at our reference movement, our test movement. Put your hands on your belly and lift your head to look to your feet and just feel how much of your core muscles do you engage. And we will do isometric contractions of the pelvic floor in a next lesson, not now, but the pelvic floor can contribute yes, to the so when you make this sound or say or scream or make a loud noise, then the pelvic floor engages or should engage if it's still working. And maybe you can do this. Excuse me. Can you feel your pelvis floor starting to work when you excuse me? Then and maybe you can use your pelvic floor to lift your head or to lift one leg. Yes, this thing of lifting a leg and pressing down the opposite shoulder and the other leg, and maybe the buttocks can work, and maybe you have the side bend, and all this. So that's the lesson. Play with these movements to make them your own. So they go into your flesh and blood, so to speak. And what is left to do? Please come up. We will finish this lesson in standing. So please come up to stand. Yes, and take a moment to reorient yourself to the world. It's now a different position and different relation to gravity. Suddenly, you're not supported by your back anymore, but the two tiny feet in comparison to the full length of the body. Of course, the feet are small. And yes, feel, how you stand, how you perceive yourself. And then think about how this translates to standing and to walking, what we just did. Think about how is it to take a step? If you lift your left leg, so we started with the left leg, so when you bring your left leg forwards, what happens? And if you walk half the speed, and then take your time, and then half the speed, and half the speed, and then suddenly the walking becomes not a walking like on a bicycle again, but the walking starts to go from the left to the right. So slow down and slow down and slow down, and nobody's looking. Just make it even slower until you're in slow motion, and play with changing speeds, then a little bit faster again and a little bit slower again, until you can observe when the left leg comes forwards, the right leg goes backwards, and it's the left shoulder that goes backwards. And when the right leg comes forwards, the right leg comes forwards, the right shoulder goes backwards, and the left foot pushes backwards. It's pretty much exactly the same like what we did in lying down, but now you're in standing. And as I said, recruit your muscles. Don't just fall from one side to the other, but use some of your core muscles. So in the 60s and 70s, every movement teacher said people are too tight, too tense, they have to loosen up, they have to belly breathe. And now it's completely the opposite. Now it's different. Now the people are not too tight, the people are too loose. So we have to, we overdid it. We were too good. Our studentship, we were too good of students. We let loose too much. We cannot lose so much, but need to tighten them up a little bit. So too little and too much, that's the, in German we have this saying, zu wenig und zu viel, das ist das Narrenziel. In English, too little and too much, that's is the fool's play. Yes. So we have to find the middle way, to just use the right amount of core contraction when we go from, so there has to be some contraction, has to be. Don't let yourself slump down. Danger, danger if you let yourself go too much, and danger if you tighten up too much. Depends on the task at hand, of course. If you have to fight or if you have to run, you have to engage, and then you can let, and so forth. But find this find these relationships inside yourself. The things we have been using for the last half hour, more, 40 minutes. All right, so play with these things until they are yours, until they are in your flesh and blood and you have your own style of using them. All right, so thank you for watching. Enjoy your movements, make the movements your own. Take good care of yourself. I count on you. And see you in the next video.